Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about how defeat can be immensely beneficial. So I help coach a local high school football team here, and I started last year. I was a lot more involved last year compared to this year. I'm only dedicating about once a week to spending time with the players, and I'll show up on games to kind of be there as a support system. Mostly what I focus on is the player's mental state, because that's really what I do on a daily basis anyways. And the mental side of whatever it is that we choose to do is so pivotal, it's so foundational, yet it's often overlooked. In sports, in general, we're mostly grappled with a player's physique, their speed, their strength, all the physical attributes, and the mindset becomes secondary or almost even forgotten about. But if you look deeper into what makes players and teams and people in general very successful at what they choose to do, is it all starts with their mental state. They have the right perspective, the right focus that allows them to execute consistently at a high level. So I really do not have a defined role within the team. It's a little bit disorganized, but part of that is what allows me to kind of be free range. I can show up once a week and do different things. So I'm mainly there as a support system, like I said. I really like to spend time with the players, getting to know them and develop them by helping them consistently enjoy practice, looking forward to the games. So this past week, we had our third game, and it was against the more well-organized football program. And it just shows when you look at the opponent, how they warm up. They're just very detail-oriented. They're the pinnacle of the league that we're in. And granted, we only have 5 teams within the division. We each play each other twice a year, so there's 10 games. Most of the players and the coaches are well aware of the opponent that we were up against this past week. And a lot of the focus is kind of hoping to compete with them. Almost a sense of dreading it a bit. While for me, this is the most exciting game of the season because it just shows us how far we need to go to better compete. So the final score was 68-3. Yes, they were the better team. They really poured it on us. But the score doesn't indicate all of what that might entail. Just looking at a score like this, it might make people wonder, why even compete with them? Why even play football and know that you're going to lose by that wide of a margin? But for me, especially lately, winning and losing, the final outcome is secondary. It's not at the top of my mind. The end result will take care of itself the better and more consistently that we can execute the entire process. In this case, it means getting better and better in practice because that's where the majority of the growth comes from. The game is merely a reward of the work that was put in on a weekly basis. The head coach is his first time being in that position with this particular team. He's brought in 2 other coaches to kind of help build the program. And as you would expect, they're focused a lot on winning and dominating their opponents and things like that. But that's counterintuitive to what the players really need. So instead of being focused on getting a certain outcome, it really should be about how can we as coaches put the players in positions to succeed. It's simply not all on the players that their success and failures falls directly on themselves, but we as coaches must evaluate to see if what we're doing is good for player development. So one thing that is clearly evident, the opponent that we played this past week, the ones that beat us 68-3, their coaches are very well organized. And what truly stands out is that they communicate amongst each other very well and with the players. So while their team as a whole is very strong and has had tremendous amounts of success, there's not a particular player on their team that is so much more better than everybody else on the field. There's no one that really dominates. Yes, many of the players have good physical attributes, and it shows in the shape that they're in. This just further drives home the point of how crucial coaching truly is, because coaching is not just telling somebody what to do, but it's explaining it's teaching, it's demonstrating, it's walking through, combining all those things together is what makes coaching coaching. A coach isn't simply somebody who just yells out instructions to people or players to do what they say. It's not making those that they lead fear them, but a person, a leader that empowers each player individually and as a team. One or a group of coaches that truly develops and builds up the people that they interact with. But this gets lost in translation because of the perception that the person that is the loudest, that yells, garners attention, is a natural leader. The alpha male is what's thought of what they say is as goes, diverting from what really makes an alpha an alpha. An alpha male is knowing how to lead effectively, when to take charge and when to kind of step back, or when to really just be there as a support system. But this gets forgotten about. A little bit of the concept of the dog that barks the loudest comes off that way to scare off what they perceive as a threat. But just because a dog doesn't bark at what they don't see as a threat does not make them soft or weak, but it shows discipline and restraint. And when coaches can do that, it makes their path to success so much more evident. In using this approach, it's about working with everybody involved that lightens the load on each individual, that allows people to play to their strengths while limiting or managing their weaknesses and still developing those areas as time progresses. So this past game, it was a very humbling experience, and it's something that I was expecting leading up to the week. And I like to show up in the beginning of the week on a Tuesday to talk to the players throughout practice, making sure they're mentally and physically engaged with the focus of just having fun in practice and consistently working to get better. I understand the new coaches want to make sure that they lay a good foundation, so the focus is winning the game. This obviously grabs the attention of the players because that's what many of them perceive why they play this game. So a lot of the talk is about the goal is going 1-0, dominating the other team. This approach is to instill confidence in the players so they can practice hard, and that will translate into the game that gives them a better chance to really compete at a high level. These are good things to aspire to because in whatever it is that we choose to do in life, you gotta believe in yourself because that's where much of your effort is gonna come from. Think about it. If you don't believe that you can do something, you're more likely to not give your all because of the thoughts of, I'm not gonna do well, so why should I give my best? Because that's just gonna set me up for disappointment. So we're kind of trying to protect ourselves, and instilling this makes a lot of sense to get the players to buy in that they can achieve great things. Since I only come once a week, I'm not inclined to really give my take on changing the message because as a coaching staff, we're a bit in silos where we rarely talk to each other, and partly that's on me too, right? I need to kind of step it up, but I haven't found the effective way to do it. Because if I come at this at a wrong way, obviously these coaches could shun me, and I'm mostly there for the players. I want to be there as a support system, like mentioned before. I want to be there to provide some value in some capacity. And part of that is trying to make sure that I'm working with the players, with the coaches, and not being antagonistic, trying to cause a strife. But when you can trust yourself a lot more, the thoughts start to come about, questioning, is this the best approach? Is there a more effective way of doing this? And as of right now, I don't think this coaching staff leading the way is open to suggestions, especially for someone who only comes once a week. So I understand, right? They're the ones making that bigger commitment of being at practice every day and of organizing all the things. So this approach of getting the players to buy in that they compete with anybody and win kind of sets them up for a bit of a disappointment because it sets expectations really high. And when things don't go as expected, it's a shock to the players. And this gets them to hesitate, self-doubt, and that affects the effort that they give. Occasionally, I'll talk to the players as a team, trying to deliver an effective message so they can focus and practice effectively. And we'll try to avoid openly disagreeing with what the coaches are saying. But I'll talk to certain players individually to let them know that let's not be focused on the outcome of the game, but let's focus on consistently working to get better in practice, because that's where the growth comes from. That's where getting better comes from. We don't get better in the games. That's merely the reward for what was done during the week. Back in early August when football practice started off, it was pretty evident that us as coaches were moving a little bit too fast. We were inconsistent with what we were teaching the players. For some of the players, it was the first time actually playing organized football, so they're lacking a clear understanding of how to effectively tackle an opponent. There are a handful of first-timers, and it seems to be going too fast for them. So in the beginning, I'd show up 2 times a week. I came to notice that the coaches actually did not walk through how to tackle. One day, it was just put on the pads and hit each other. Maybe the thinking is that players know how to do this, or they should know how to do it, and if they don't, maybe they're not cut out for football. I haven't spoken to the coaches about this because there just seems to be a bit of a wall when it comes to asking questions. It just seems like the players will really benefit from walking through tackling. And I mean literally walking through it, where you play it out in slow motion, breaking down each step from positioning the hips, the feet, staying balanced, getting low, slowly dropping the shoulder, and where exactly to put their head, and wrapping their arms around the opponent to secure the tackle. And these coaches have played football previously, so maybe it's second nature to them. But we got to understand where the players are coming from, that we all have different starting points. And we got to adapt. We got to bring them along. And that's what coaching is developing these players. They all have, like mentioned before, different starting points and progress at different rates. So we got to be conscious of that and figure out how can we best do that. When I check on certain players, I'll ask them, hey, does tackling make sense? Are you understanding where you should be making contact, where you should be going? And generally the response is muted, kind of shaking their head, but not really telling me, yes, I understand this, or no, I don't. This might be an indication that they're not comfortable in speaking up about what they don't know, what they might be lacking in. And I try to consistently tell them there's no shame in not knowing what to do. And when you ask, you're on the right track of getting better. And that's going to lead to more and more confidence that allows you to play freely and faster. You know, there was the very first practice when I met the defensive coordinator. He came off very open to suggestions, and I like that. I felt like we had a good relationship in the beginning. So last year I coached the defensive backs, and a lot of what we worked on was footwork, backpedaling, getting hands on receivers, disrupting them when they're running routes, getting off of blocks, and effective form tackling. There's this very beneficial drill that we walked through where it actually had somebody in front of them and they were working to get off a block, using their eyes to figure out where their opponent is. And that kind of mentally primed them to stay in balance, stay square so they can wrap their arms around the opponent to make the tackle and bring them down. So that first day, the coach and I are getting to know each other, and he takes over coaching the defensive backs. And I demonstrated a few drills. And I told him at the end of it, hey, these are just suggestions, you run it as you see fit. And he tells me, yeah, I really like those couple of drills that were incorporated. And I thought to myself, all right, cool. I'll just be as a resource, let them lead the way, and maybe he'll want a second opinion every now and then. So the next week I come to practice and I join the defensive coordinator with the players, and he doesn't run any of the stuff that I showed him. The things that he was running kind of made me really question, is this the most effective use of the player's time? Because it seems to have minimal impact in them getting better. And then the next week, he would do different things that really wasn't simulating the physical aspect of the sport. Then slowly I drifted away and was more of a free-range resource, especially to the players that seemed to kind of get very little playing time, those that would be mostly on the sideline, Maybe they just felt excluded or not yet developed. And I just tell them certain pointers that they should focus on that could help them. At this time, I kind of got the picture that these new coaches were just going to run it their way and just didn't seem open to other suggestions. Like I said, I only come once a week and they're there every day, and I wasn't going to fight them on how they handle things. I knew that the players were underprepared going into games, but I wasn't sure how much. And this obviously showed up against the stronger teams and just in the lack of competitiveness when we played them. Quickly, I noticed that just the overall way practices were run, there was, yelling when things didn't go to the coach's liking. And this just conditions players to fear their coach, to fear making mistakes. And this leads to them being more tight and not having fun. So the first game, our team lost 49-0. But then the second game, we won 28-3. And then the third game was obviously this very humbling experience of losing 68-3. So this team that we just played is very well organized, very disciplined, and overall well coached. They did many things very efficiently while we were lacking many fundamental things. By halftime, we already were down. I think it was like 42-0. And throughout the first half, I would just keep telling the players, hey, you got to continue to play hard. It's not just when things are good, you give a higher amount of effort. That should be independent of what the outcome is. So in both good and bad times. And many of the players responded very well, just moving on to the next play, playing hard. And there were some very good things that they did. But the inconsistencies are what really hurt us. And that comes from how we practice. That falls on us coaches, me included. And I was really surprised by the coaching staff in how well they responded. My expectation was that they were going to get very angry and yell at the players, almost demeaning them, because that's what happened the week prior at halftime. We were playing poorly, so the head coach yells at the players at halftime. And I thought this was borderline abusive. But throughout the first half of this past week's game, he stayed calm, and then at halftime, he brings the coaches together, which is the first time I actually felt included. It seemed to be very humbling, especially after having such high expectations of winning, of dominating the other team, and then it not coming to fruition. It might have made the coach reevaluate, hey, we need to do something a little bit different. I need to do something a little bit different. So I would restrain myself from intervening and kind of wanted to let the games play out and see how everyone would react or respond. And I think in this case, the coach responded pretty well. He says he doesn't have a rah-rah speech right now, and it's time to just give some of the younger players some playing time so they can gain confidence for the rest of the season, which I thought was great because much of the focus was more on the better players. Practices were even geared to them to get better, but everybody else was kind of just left to the wayside. This was a great step in the right direction. And then when the younger players played, I consistently heard from the new coaches to go out there and have fun and play hard. I was really surprised by that because it was a noticeable difference in their approach, in the message that they were saying. And this is going to help pay big dividends later on. At the end of the game, the head coach, he addresses the team very casually and says, listen, guys, this wasn't very pretty. We're going to watch the film on Monday, but this is a great learning opportunity for us to grow. So he almost did a 180 from consistently talking about winning to now growing. And these two things can be the same at times, but other times they can be different. Sometimes winning is simply through how much growth one experiences, because when you can consistently grow, it means that you're getting better, and those are small wins that add up over time. But simply focusing on winning without the growing aspect signals an all or nothing approach, because sometimes when an individual or a team experiences growth and the end result is that they fall short of being victorious on the scoreboard, that doesn't mean that it was a wasted effort. You can win but not grow. This oftentimes comes from when things are relatively easy, with very little struggle in attaining what you were after. So in instances like this, yeah, winning the easy things might seem like it's a wanted feeling, but it can feel unsatisfying because of the lack of struggle to get there, to push to get better. It's understandable to focus on winning, to get players confident, to know that they can compete with better teams. And that starts by giving a high amount of effort consistently. And winning also validates our effort. It makes us feel that it was truly worth it. This is very obvious. We're all trying to win at something. We're trying to reach a certain goal, a certain milestone. But instead of trying to achieve the obvious, how about we do all the things that it takes to get there, where it becomes the entire focus? The general concept of focus on the process. You got to love the journey, enjoy the journey. As cliche as it sounds, it really does take some pressure off of needing to get a certain outcome. By alleviating some of this pressure, you're more free to just focus on what's right in front of you, given a high amount of effort to execute consistently at a high level. When that becomes top of mind, the results truly take care of themselves. There's this one relatively young player, he played last year and he has a great attitude. Before the game, I just tell him, hey, remember avoiding getting too high and too low. You want to be right in the middle. So when things are good, managing those emotions to not get so riled up. And then when things are not going so well, that's not the time to get low, down on yourself. And he was really impressive in how he put that into action. He was able to play consistently well throughout the game because even in those moments where the opponent was scoring, his effort was not dictated by an outcome. He was going to play to his standard at a high standard no matter what. And that shows me he's going to do well in whatever he decides to pursue. There's another younger player in the 9th grade. He got some playing time and he's a very focused player, but he seems to put a lot of pressure on himself. And there was an instance in the game where he missed recovering a fumble and was extremely hard on himself, to the point where I think he was in shock because when I asked him what's wrong, did the other team do something to upset you? And he says in a very uncontrollable anger where his breathing was really hard, it was, he says, I missed a fumble. I missed it. I don't know if some of this comes from being focused on the end result, but he struggled with letting go of mistakes. And the rest of the game, he didn't play because his focus was thrown off. The emotions really got the better of him. Even though I tried to talk to him, I understood that he's probably not going to hear me out as he's all riled up. But in all of this, I thought this was a tremendous, valuable experience. Not just for the new coaches, but for me as well. A few years ago, I think I would have handled this poorly. But now my mental state has allowed me to embrace this as a great opportunity. By letting go of an outcome and simply focus on getting better, doing all the things consistently well, and enjoying the daily work involved, it takes the pressure off of needing to be validated by the end result. This was not hoping to get embarrassed, but a humbling experience for everyone involved that we should self-reflect and figure out, what do I need to do to help everyone involved succeed? To put aside ego because it gets in the way of making progress. And that means asking others for their feedback and truly being open to what is said, incorporating new things that bring value. In our defeats is where we can gain so much because it's an opportunity to develop resilience, better respond, and search for what we learn that makes us more developed to better handle what we face. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.